You're standing on the forecourt. The salesman is smiling. The badge on the bonnet looks premium. The deal looks tempting. And you're about to sign away £30,000 of your hard-earned money. Stop. Because some of the shiniest new cars sold in Britain today will quietly bleed you dry within 3 years. And a few plain, unglamorous ones will run past 200,000 miles and barely ask for a thing. I learned this the hard way, over decades of buying badly. I'm going to name 7 brands I'd never touch with my own money right now in the UK, and 3 I'd buy tomorrow without blinking. Stay to the end, because the last trick I'll share comes straight from a reliability survey most buyers have never even heard of, and it lets you check any car before you spend a penny. I remember standing in a dealership in Reading back in the early 2000s, running my hand along a beautiful dashboard, ignoring the little voice that said, "This feels too good for the price." I ignored that voice for years. It cost me thousands. Now I listen to it, and I want you to listen too. Here's the thing nobody on that forecourt will tell you. The price on the windscreen is the smallest number you'll ever pay for a car. The real cost is what comes after: the repairs, the depreciation, the days off the road waiting for a part to arrive from abroad. And that hidden cost varies enormously depending on the badge. So let me start with the first brand that has burned more British drivers than almost any other, and yet still sells like hotcakes because people fall in love with the image instead of the ownership. Let's talk about Land Rover, and specifically the Range Rover and the Discovery. Now I want to be fair. There is nothing on this earth that feels quite like sitting in a Range Rover. The commanding view, the leather, the sense that you've arrived. Lo furiere. I understand the appeal completely, because I felt it myself the first time I drove one along a wet country lane, and the whole world seemed to calm down around me. But feelings don't fix cars. Numbers do. And the numbers on modern Land Rovers have been frightening for years. Reliability surveys run by Warranty Direct through their Reliability Index, and later the big owner surveys, repeatedly put Land Rover at or near the bottom of the entire industry. We're talking about air suspension that collapses, electrical faults that light up the dashboard like a Christmas tree, and infotainment systems that freeze solid. I had a neighbor, a retired builder, sensible man, who bought a 3-year-old Discovery because he thought he was being clever buying used and letting someone else take the depreciation hit. Within 18 months, he'd spent over £4,000 on repairs. The air suspension went first, then a coolant problem, then the electronics. He sold it at a loss and told me he'd never felt so foolish in his life. And here's the quiet cruelty of it. A Range Rover can lose half its value in 3 years. 50%. So you pay £90,000, and by the time your warranty runs out, it's worth 45. And now the expensive faults arrive with no warranty to cover them. You're paying twice, and the second bill is the one that hurts. Therefore, before you fall for that commanding driving position, you have to ask who actually benefits from you buying that badge, and I promise you the answer is not you. Because here is where it gets interesting, and here is where I started to get angry once I understood it. The car industry has learned something profound about human beings. They've learned that we buy with our hearts and justify with our heads afterward. The marketing budget for a luxury SUV is enormous, and every penny of it is aimed at making you feel a certain way: successful, safe, admired. Almost none of it is spent telling you what the car will cost to keep on the road when it's 5 years old. That gap between how a car makes you feel on day 1 and what it does to your bank account by year 4, that gap is where fortunes are made. Not your fortune, theirs. So the second brand I'd steer well clear of plays exactly the same trick, but with an Italian accent. Alfa Romeo. Beautiful cars. Genuinely, achingly beautiful. The Giulia is one of the best-looking saloons money can buy, and it drives like a dream when it's working. When it's working. That's the phrase that follows Alfa Romeo around like a shadow. For decades, owner surveys in Britain have flagged Alfa for electrical gremlins, sensor failures, and niggling faults that never seem to end. There's an old joke among mechanics that you're not a real petrolhead until you've owned an Alfa, and you're not a wise one until you've sold it. I test drove a Giulia a few years back, fully intending to buy it. I sat in the car park afterward for 20 minutes, heart pounding, wanting it badly. Then I phoned an independent mechanic I trust, a man who's had his hands inside engines for 40 years, and I asked him one question: would you buy one with your own money? He laughed for about 10 seconds before he answered. That laugh saved me a fortune. The problem with Alfa isn't that the cars are bad to drive. The problem is what happens when a specialist sensor fails and the part has to come from Italy and the labor rate at a franchise dealer is over £140 an hour. Suddenly your beautiful bargain is sitting on a ramp for 3 weeks and your wallet is on fire. But the third brand on my list is one that will surprise a lot of you, because it wears a very modern, very fashionable badge, and everybody assumes new means reliable. Tesla. Now, I need to be careful here, because Tesla drivers are passionate, and in some ways rightly so. The technology is genuinely clever, the performance is startling, and running costs on electricity can be low if you charge at home. I've driven them. The instant acceleration is a giggle every single time. But here's what the marketing won't tell you. The build quality has been wildly inconsistent. Owner surveys and quality studies, including the big American J.D. Power Work and British owner reports, have repeatedly flagged panel gaps, paint problems, trim that rattles, and door handles and screens that fail. This is a company that mastered the software and, for years, struggled with the basic craftsmanship of actually bolting a car together properly. And then there's the repair problem, which almost nobody thinks about until it's too late. A minor accident in a Tesla can lead to an eye-watering repair bill, because the way the cars are built makes some repairs enormously expensive, and insurers have taken notice. I've heard of premiums that made grown men wince. A cracked screen isn't a screen anymore. It's the brain of the car, and replacing it can cost thousands. I met a chap at a service station near Birmingham. Lovely fellow. Absolutely loved his Tesla. And in the same breath told me his insurance had nearly doubled, and he was terrified of a small bump, because he'd heard the repair could cost more than the car was worth. That's not freedom. That's a different kind of dependence, and it's exactly the sort of quiet trap I want you to see coming. Because the pattern is becoming clear now, isn't it? The brands that make you feel the most, the ones with the strongest image and the loudest marketing, are very often the ones that cost you the most to actually live with. Therefore, let me show you the next one, and this is a brand that has confused British buyers for years, because it sits in a strange middle ground where the badge promises rugged American toughness, but the ownership experience tells a very different story. Jeep. The image is magnificent. Freedom, mountains, mud, adventure. Jeep sells a feeling of escape better than almost anyone. But in British reliability surveys, Jeep has spent years languishing near the bottom, tangled up with the same electrical and build quality issues that plague several of the group's other brands. Parts availability in the UK can be patchy, because Jeep has never sold in the enormous numbers here that it does in America. And a car is only as good as your ability to fix it quickly and affordably when something goes wrong. A rare car with a common fault is a very expensive car. I looked hard at a Jeep once, drawn in by the styling, and what put me off wasn't a survey at all. It was walking into 3 different independent garages and watching the mechanics pull a face when I said the word Jeep. When the people who fix cars for a living flinch at a name, you should listen. They have no marketing budget. They have no reason to lie to you. They just remember every car that's given them grief. That, right there, is one of the most valuable free tools you have, and I'll come back to it, because later I'm going to show you exactly how to tap into that mechanic's knowledge before you buy, without owning a single tool yourself. But first, the fifth brand, and this one hurts to say, because it used to mean something wonderful in this country. Fiat. The little Fiat 500 is adorable. It's cheap to buy, it's cheap to tax, and it's perfect for nipping around town. I completely understand why they're everywhere. But underneath that cute styling, owner surveys have flagged a steady drip of niggling problems, electrical faults, clutch issues, and interior bits that wear out faster than they should. Now, a niggle on a cheap car is different from a catastrophe on an expensive one. I'll grant you that. If you buy a 500 with your eyes open, knowing it's a fashion accessory with wheels rather than a long-haul workhorse, you might be perfectly happy. But too many people buy them expecting the bulletproof reliability of a Japanese city car, and they're disappointed within a couple of years. The deeper problem is what happens at resale and at repair. Cheap to buy often means expensive to run over time, because the margins were squeezed out of the car when it was built, and something has to give. Usually it's durability. And here's the villain sharpening into focus. The industry has discovered that a low sticker price is the most powerful bait there is. Get you in cheap, and they make their money later, on finance interest, on servicing, on parts, on the next car when this one disappoints you and you trade it in early. The whole system is designed around you not keeping a car for 15 years. But keeping a car for 15 years is exactly how our parents and grandparents stayed out of debt. Which brings me to the sixth brand, and this is where I need to talk directly to those of you who think reliability rankings are just for people with money to burn. Maybe you're watching this thinking, that's all very well, but I can only afford whatever's cheapest. I don't have the luxury of choosing. I hear you. My father raised a family on very little, and he'd have laughed at the idea of picking a car for anything but the lowest price. So this next part is especially for you, because I'm going to show you that the cheapest car to buy is almost never the cheapest car to own. And the good news is that owning wisely costs you nothing extra up front. It just costs you a little patience and a few honest questions. The sixth brand is DS, the so-called premium spin-off with the French styling and the fancy interiors. On paper, it looks like affordable luxury. In practice, British owner surveys have flagged reliability and electrical concerns, and the dealer network is thin, which means when something goes wrong, you may be driving a long way or waiting a long time to get it sorted. Affordable luxury that spends a fortnight in the garage isn't affordable, and it isn't luxury. It's just frustration with nice seats. And that instinct, learning to read the people and the paperwork instead of the badge, is the whole reason I sat down and wrote 3 books after a lifetime of paying to learn things the hard way. One of them walks you through a forecourt step by step, the questions to ask before you touch the car, how to read the paper trail on any used motor, the exact words to say when they lowball your trade-in, and how to work out honestly whether the car on your drive is worth keeping or selling. The other 2 go under the bonnet, teaching you to catch the small failing part before it becomes a bill that ruins your month, and how to push back when a repair arrives suspiciously soon after a warranty ends. Everything in them is done with what is already in your garage. No scanner, no lift, no appointment. If today's video is helping you, the books are where all of it lives, properly researched and in full. To get the collection, scan the QR code right there on your screen. Link in the description. Pinned comment. Now, back to what mechanics know and salesmen never say, because that free knowledge is the tool I keep coming back to. And the seventh brand I'd avoid right now is a whole category more than a single name, and I say this gently because I know some of you are tempted. The brand new, ultra-cheap arrivals that have appeared on our roads in the last few years, often from manufacturers most of us had never heard of a decade ago. Some of them may well turn out to be excellent, but here is the hard truth of car buying, and it's a truth as old as the motor car itself. You cannot know how a car will age until it has aged. A brand new mark with no track record is a gamble. You don't know how the parts supply will hold up in 5 years. You don't know whether the company will even still be selling here. You don't know what these cars will be worth secondhand, and that unknown is precisely why they depreciate so fast. When nobody knows if a car will last, nobody wants to buy it used, and the value falls through the floor. I'm not telling you never to buy one. I'm telling you to let someone else be the guinea pig. Let the first wave of owners find the faults. In 3 or 4 years, the reliability surveys will tell you the truth, and then you can buy with confidence, probably at a much lower price. Patience is the cheapest insurance policy there is. Now, before I give you the 3 brands I'd actually buy, let me hand you the tool I promised, the one that costs nothing and works this very week, with what you already have at home. Here it is. Before you buy any used car, any car at all, you do 3 free things. First, you type the exact model and year into a search engine, followed by the words common problems, and you read what real owners are shouting about in the forums. Not the reviews, the forums, the place where furious people go to warn each other. Our grandparents asked the neighbors before they bought anything. This is the modern version of leaning over the garden fence. Second, you phone 2 independent garages, not dealers, independents, and you ask them one plain question. If I brought you this exact car, would you be happy to see it, or would you groan? Mechanics will tell you the truth because they have nothing to sell you. I've done this dozens of times now, and their answers have never once let me down. Third, and this is the one people always skip, you check the cost and availability of 2 or 3 common replacement parts before you buy. A wing mirror, a headlight, a common sensor. If those parts are cheap and available, the car will be affordable to keep. If they're rare and dear, walk away, no matter how lovely the car looks. This one check has saved me more money than any other single thing I've ever learned about cars, and it takes about 10 minutes on the telephone. None of that requires a single tool, a single ramp, or a single pound spent. It just requires you to slow down and ask the questions the salesman is praying you won't ask. Therefore, let me now show you where I'd actually put my own money, because avoiding the losers is only half the battle. The other half is finding the quiet, unglamorous winners that just keep going. The first brand I'd buy tomorrow is Toyota. And I know, it's not exciting. Nobody's heart races at the sight of a Corolla. But let me tell you what does race, your bank balance, in the right direction when you own one of these. Toyota has topped or sat near the top of reliability surveys in Britain and around the world for years, decade after decade. The engines are built to standards that border on obsessive. There are Toyota engines out there past 300,000 miles, still running sweetly. And here's the part that really matters for older drivers on a budget. Because everyone knows they're reliable, they hold their value, so even though you pay a fair bit up front, you get much of it back when you sell. I bought a used Toyota after years of buying flashier cars, and honestly, it was almost boring how little went wrong. I kept waiting for the catch. There wasn't one. It started every morning, it sipped fuel, and the only money it asked for was oil and the occasional set of tires. After decades of drama, that boredom felt like a holiday. And their hybrids, in particular, have proven astonishingly durable. Toyota has been building hybrids since the late 1990s, longer than almost anyone, and that quarter century of experience shows. The batteries last far longer than the doom mongers predicted. This is old, proven knowledge, dressed up in new clothes. But if Toyota is the sensible choice, the second brand I'd recommend is the one that quietly stole a march on everyone by making a promise no one else dared to make. Kia, and its sister brand Hyundai, which deserves the same praise. Not so long ago, these Korean names were seen as cheap and cheerful and nothing more. But something remarkable happened. They got serious about quality, and then they backed it up with a warranty that told you everything you needed to know about their confidence. Kia offered a 7-year warranty. 7 years. Hyundai offered 5. No company offers a warranty that long unless they are genuinely certain their cars won't break, because a warranty is a promise written in money, and they don't make that promise lightly. Think about what that 7-year warranty actually means for you. It means that if you buy a Kia and keep it, the most expensive years of unexpected repairs are covered. For someone on a fixed income, someone who dreads the surprise bill more than the regular one, that peace of mind is worth its weight in gold. I was skeptical, genuinely skeptical, because I remembered when these cars were the butt of jokes. So I watched them closely for years before I trusted them. And the reliability surveys kept climbing, and the owners kept saying the same thing. It just works. When a brand improves that much and puts its money where its mouth is, you'd be foolish not to take it seriously. Which leads me to the third brand I'd happily buy, and this one is for those of you who want reliability without paying a fortune to get it. Dacia. Now stay with me, because this is the cleverest bargain on the British market right now, and hardly anyone understands why. Dacia is owned by Renault, and here's the beautiful part. Dacia cars are built using proven, older, thoroughly tested Renault engines and parts, the stuff that has already had its faults ironed out over years of use in other cars. So you're not the guinea pig. You're getting technology that's already been proven reliable, wrapped in a simple, no-frills car that costs a fraction of its rivals. Simplicity is reliability. This is a truth our grandparents understood in their bones. The fewer gadgets there are to go wrong, the fewer things go wrong. A Dacia doesn't have 40 computer-controlled luxuries waiting to fail. It has what you need, and not much more. And that plainness is exactly why it lasts, and why it's cheap to fix. I looked at a Dacia expecting to sneer, if I'm honest. I'd been conditioned, like most of us, to think cheap meant nasty. But when I sat in it and drove it and looked at what it cost to run, I realized I was looking at the closest thing to an honest car sold in Britain today. No pretense, no image, no marketing trickery. Just transport that works and won't ruin you. My father would have loved it. Now let me give you the thing I promised at the very start, the one that pulls all of this together, the trick that lets you cut through every advert and every salesman and every glossy brochure and see the truth about any car. For years, buyers relied on something in this country called the Reliability Index, work built on the back of real warranty claims data gathered by Warranty Direct. Think about how powerful that is. Not opinions, not surveys of what people remember. Actual records of what actually broke and how much it actually cost to fix, drawn from thousands upon thousands of real repair claims. That's the difference between gossip and evidence. And alongside it, the big annual owner surveys run by consumer groups and motoring organizations gather the real-world experiences of tens of thousands of ordinary drivers every single year. Here is the secret, and it's so simple it's almost insulting that the industry doesn't shout it from the rooftops. Every single one of these reliability findings, going back years, tells the same story with almost boring consistency. The Japanese and Korean brands built for durability sit at the top. The image-driven luxury and the exotic badges sit near the bottom. The pattern barely changes from year to year, because engineering culture barely changes from year to year. A company that cared about reliability 20 years ago still cares now, and a company that chased image then still chases it now. So the finale, the real trick, is this. Before you buy any car, spend one evening reading the last few years of reliability rankings from these real data sources, the warranty claim indexes, and the big owner surveys. Don't read 1 year. Read several, and look for the names that stay near the top year after year after year. Consistency across time is the single most reliable predictor there is, because it can't be faked by a good marketing year or a clever advert. A brand can buy a good headline. It cannot buy a decade of low warranty claims. That knowledge existed all along. It was gathered painstakingly from real repairs and real owners. But it got buried under a mountain of advertising, because the truth is bad for business when your business depends on selling feelings. Someone kept that data alive anyway, quietly, year after year, and now you hold it. One evening of reading, and you'll never be fooled by a shiny badge again. I spent decades buying with my heart and paying with my savings. I bought the image, the leather, the badge that made me feel like I'd made it. And every time, the car that impressed my neighbors was the car that emptied my wallet. The plain ones, the boring ones, the ones nobody envied, those were the ones that quietly looked after me. Nobody taught me that. I had to lose thousands to learn it. You don't have to. If you're the sort of person who suspects that a great deal of what we're sold is designed to keep us paying, over and over, for things that should last, then you already understand what this whole video is really about. It's not about cars. It's about refusing to be quietly fleeced by people who count on you falling in love before you do the maths. So tell me this, and be honest. Which of these 7 did you nearly buy? Or worse, which one did you already buy and live to regret? Drop it in the comments. Tell me what it cost you, because someone reading is standing on a forecourt right now, and your story might save them. And tell me where in the country you're watching from, because I read every one. If this helped you see through the shine, then join the rest of us who are done being sold feelings instead of value, and done paying twice for the privilege. There's a growing crowd of us who'd rather drive something plain and keep our money than drive something flash and hand it over. Subscribe and stand with them. Because next time, I'm going to show you the exact age and mileage at which a used car becomes the single best value on the market, the sweet spot where somebody else has already paid for the depreciation and the car still has a decade of life left in it. Most people buy years too early and pay for it. I'll show you the precise window. Don't miss it. Before you go, one last thing. This video named the brands, but inside the Old Ways Society I walk you through the full badge-by-badge reliability breakdown with the survey numbers, picking up right where we just stopped. If you're unsure about a car, ask me directly, and a real person, me or my team, answers you. You won't be doing this alone. Just point your phone's camera at the code on screen. Cancel anytime, one click. Now that you know which brands to trust, let me help you avoid the costly features that quietly drain your money. A mechanic with 20 years experience reveals what to skip. It's starting right here.